So, a while back, I had played a game on this channel that I had picked up out of complete nowhere known as Hylics, and later on posted a review online for the channel. The idea at first with this game was to get a short little title out before I went on vacation for my brother's wedding in Cancun. And to be honest, I didn't really think it would do all that well either. When it first ever dropped, it barely broke 50 views and sat that way for the rest of the week. Then something happened. The video got traction. Like, a lot of traction. And nearly reached 1K within a couple of days, with a lot of people talking about how interesting and unique the title was in the comments. This surprised me, as I had fully expected this video to be a drop in the bucket, and I would just continue onwards. But lo and behold, it became one of my best performing videos in a good long while. And first of all, I want to say thanks a ton for that, and since so many of you guys really seemed to like it, I decided, why don't I pick up the sequel that everyone was telling me about in the comments that was just so much better and improved upon all the faults I had with the first game. I had beaten it recently, and now I can definitely see why so many people recommended I play it, because wow, not only was this game a massive increase in quality on pretty much all fronts, but it might somehow be even more insane than the original game was. And man, am I excited to talk about it, so how about we end this intro and get into the video.
First things first on my list of pros, let's talk about how the game looks, cause holy fuck was this a crazy ass style. I've stated in my review of Hylics 1 that I think the best aspect of the original game was how insanely surreal the art style was, as instead of moving for a more traditional pixel or even 3D style, Hylics utilized a mix of stop motion, rotoscoping, and a few 2D backgrounds to give it one of the most unique looking styles I had ever seen from a game. And the sequel takes these concepts, and as you could probably guess, evolves upon them in an absolutely incredible looking way. My guess is that with the success of the first one, they gave this one more of a budget, and the team behind it decided to go absolutely all out, because in comparison to the first game, this one blows its visuals out of the fucking water. Every area in the game now looks much sharper and cleaner. Everything feels like it has a lot more color and vibrancy to it. One of my personal favorite additions was the inclusion of much more animation quality, especially with the enemies that now move around in battle, especially this clay dude, who is just straight up styling all over me. But out of everything, I'd say the best looking part of this game was when you finally get the airship. In comparison to the first game, where all you did was just fly over a 2D map you've already seen, this happens.
Holy shit.
Seeing this for the first ever time was absolutely mind-boggling. I know that we, as gamers, are used to seeing big open worlds in games with large maps. It's just something that we've kind of just gotten used to as decades upon decades of this tradition has pushed the franchise forward. But man, seeing the utter scope of this title in comparison to the first game after just recently beating it was just downright incredible. What an immaculate level of improvement from this team. Of course, that wasn't the only thing that improved, as gameplay got quite a bit of a boost as well. Now in the first game, I was pretty negative towards the combat. I didn't think it was bad, but it was definitely on the more forgettable parts of it. It just got dull by the halfway point because it wasn't really doing anything unique. It definitely has some cool ideas like learning spells from TVs, and was quirky enough to keep your eyes on the screen, but I'll be honest, by the time I had reached the end of the game, I was just done with Hylics 1's gameplay. Thankfully, the sequel really improves on the combat by adding a lot more for you to pay attention to. Hylics 2 has much more of an emphasis on combining the utilization of special effects from spells, along with tying those techniques to the all-new charge skill. You use these two mechanics in tandem to wipe out the waves of enemies against you. It comes together in a very solid experience, to the point where I ended up really enjoying myself. I liked using stuff like fire spells to cause continuous damage to enemies, launching a lightning spell and planning around a party member being exhausted afterwards. I liked the idea of using charge and combining it with another skill to get additional effects. I liked setting up defenses to combine together with late game preparation. The gameplay for 2 in general was just a lot more engaging. I wouldn't say it was one of the best combat systems I've ever touched, and to say it's perfect would be kind of a lie, as I did end up having some issues with it. It was definitely more engaging than the first one by a large margin. And that wasn't the only change they made to the gameplay, as Hylics 2 goes above and beyond and adds in a new section of gameplay dedicated to platforming. There's a few moments in the game where in order to open a door that either has a locked key or section of the area, you basically have to enter a 2D platformer section where you play as a virtual version of main character Wayne. They're something. To be honest, I've got issues with how these sections of the game are handled, but I do like the idea here, and I respect the fact that the creators are trying to expand on their game. They took a risk with this, and while I don't think it's super panned out well, I gotta respect them for it. That's really all I have to say about gameplay though, so how about we get into the story and characters? Yeah, so in comparison to the first game, there's actually a narrative that permeates throughout the game, which is not only a massive improvement from the first, as, let's be real here, the original had little to no story to speak of, but the story itself is just as batshit insane as you'd expect it to be from everything you're staring at. The game literally starts off with the reveal that there's like this school of Waynes that train to protect the universe or something, and you're battling an ancient cosmic entity known as Giddy. Bizarre, out there, and completely bonkers. But I gotta admit, it was entertaining to follow. It's just one of those things that's just so baffling and crazy that I couldn't help but smile. It's like if you played through a normal JRPG and then took a bunch of acid while playing it. It's also elevated just by how weird and over the top the characters like talking in the game. It speaks like a mix of pseudo-intellectuals trying to sound really smart, while at the same time downing a bunch of drugs and seeing what happens. I genuinely found myself paying attention a lot more in comparison to the first game. With that said, those are all of my pros for story and characters. So let's get into the soundtrack now. Yeah, I've got praise for the soundtrack in this one now. I loved the melodies they had in this game. The soundtracks provided in this title really captured the crazy acid trip psychedelic vibe they were going for. And admittedly, I even found myself revisiting this soundtrack whenever I could and listening to it. It's just this mix of chill and creepy that you don't see in a lot of titles. Highly recommend giving a listen to a track or two when you get a chance. And that's all my pros. It's honestly nice that I had a lot to say in the pro section in comparison to the first game. But with all of that said, it's time we moved on to the cons.
Alright, so I've spent a good amount of time in this video talking about all of the things the sequel has improved on from the original game. And I don't regret doing that in the slightest, as I'm really happy to see how much Hylics improved upon its faults. That being said, even with all of the upgrades, I still think this game has its own set of issues I want to talk about. Like the original, I really don't have any complaints about how it looks, so I'm just going to get into the gameplay faults. And for one, this game is immensely slow. I do genuinely appreciate how much this game improved itself from the original in terms of actual gameplay. It also, unfortunately, comes with the downside of it moving at a goddamn snail's pace. Yeah, the animations are definitely cool and artistic in a way you don't see any other titles really do, or probably will ever do until we get like a Hylics 3 or something. But they also cause almost every battle to go on 3 times longer than necessary. Made even worse because every enemy does the animation. And it kind of sucks because while I do enjoy the combat, it just moves so sluggishly that by the halfway point, you're just kind of tired of seeing all of the animations. It's one of those games that I really think could have benefited from something like a fast forward button, or any sort of speed multiplier to get through battles quicker. That also would have been perfect for things like overworld traversal, considering just how much bigger the world is now. It just would have really helped in the long run, especially when I was trying to play long stretches of the game, and I had to sit through the same slow-moving battle with the same slow-moving animation for the 20th time in a row. Also, minor nitpick here before I get to the bigger complaints, but I'm kind of disappointed that they got rid of the dead bodies that appeared whenever you killed an enemy in the first game. Like, yeah, sure, it doesn't really add anything, but I'm kind of sad to see it gone because it was a fun little touch. If a Hylics 3 ever does get greenlit, then I hope we bring it back. Hashtag bring back dead bodies. But anyways, my morbid fascination with dead bodies aside, I want to talk about my other gripe with the gameplay, and that's the 2D platforming sections. Now, I want to say this, they're a cool idea, and I don't want to shoot down the developer for being creative in how they add more gameplay elements. I usually love this kind of stuff, but I really did not enjoy these. They're just way too confusing on what you have to do, and they're filled to the brim with so much shit in the way, where you're just dealing with long stretches of insta-kill lava. Every time I saw that I had to take part in one of these, I just got so disinterested. I think they're great ideas, but their execution was just not to my liking. Outside of those 2 major complaints, I don't really have anything else to say about gameplay. Kinda hard to find a lot to complain about with this game when everything else was just such an improvement over the first. So, what about my issues with the narrative? I don't really have a lot of complaints there either. Yeah, it's pretty by-the-numbers save-the-world story, but it's held up by the insanity and weirdness of just how the story is told. Although I will say, the one thing that I think will take you out of it if you're not on brand on how batshit crazy and surreal it gets, there's a good chance you're probably gonna tap out pretty quick. It's super fucking weird and a complete drug trip of an experience that's a lot of fun to be on. But if you don't like that kind of stuff and prefer a more serious and focused story, yeah, I expect to tap out of this by like the 3-hour mark. There's a lot of improvements, but this is definitely an acquired taste. Other than that, I really don't have any other complaints. So how about we get into my final thoughts? You know, I think I gotta be honest here now that we're at the end. I was a bit skeptical going into this, as even though everyone was saying that it was a lot better than the first game, I wasn't exactly certain if they were going to be telling the truth or not. But after playing it for myself, yeah, I'm very impressed at how much this team has improved from the first title. They really saw what they needed to work on and knocked it out of the park. Even if admittedly there were still a few kinks they needed to be worked out, I think this was still a great game. That's why my final rating for this title is an overall very positive 8 out of 10. I don't think they seem to have plans for a third game, but if they do make a Hylics 3, I'm definitely going to get a day 1 copy. And with that, we are at the end of the video. Thank you all so much for watching. If you liked what you saw me do here, do me a solid and like and sub down below. We're trying to hit 1K this year and I think we can do it. Hit the bell for some notifications for when my videos go up. Comment down below if you want to help me in the algorithm, or if you're just up for a chat. With all that said, I'll see you next time for more RPG content.